I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join me in singing our gathering music, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. It's number 118 in your hymnals. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Let's sing that again. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. One more time. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come to this place, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of learning, all seekers after what is true, all who seek a community of compassion and diversity. Come to this place, whoever you are, though you've broken your vows 1,000 times and you're too busy and you don't have time. Come to this place, whoever you are. Lovers of wisdom, lovers of humanity, lovers of beauty. Come to this place where a love we do not make surrounds us and lifts us up and nurtures us. Come to this place, whoever you are. Ours is not a community of despair, but of hope. Not a place of judging, but of thanksgiving. Not a place of certainty, but of searching. Come to this place, whoever you are. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. And I invite you to remain risen for our chalice lighting and then covenant.
May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other.
Please join in saying our covenant words together, first in English and then in Spanish. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship. Thus do we covenant. La doctrina de esta iglesia es el amor. La búsqueda de la verdad es su sacramento y el servicio es su oración. Vivir juntos en paz, buscar el conocimiento en libertad, servir a la humanidad en comunión. Este es nuestro pacto.
Good morning. I'm Tracy Watson. My pronouns are she and her, and it is my honor to be your worship associate for today's service. A quick reminder, please silence your cell phones and thank you for wearing your masks. This morning, let us begin by acknowledging that we occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, Keats, Chumash, and Tatavian people. We honor their elders, past, present, and emerging, who have stewarded this land across generations, that we might learn and become better stewards ourselves. Welcome to Emerson Unitarian Universalist Church, named for the great American Transcendentalist writer and Unitarian minister, Ralph Waldo Emerson. We are an active, liberal, religious community that has been a part of the West Valley for over 65 years. I welcome you to this community of hope and love, of peace and justice, of wholeness and healing. It is wonderful to be with you for worship this morning in this sanctuary of spiritual freedom, where we celebrate and encourage the diversity of heritage, culture, beliefs, and experience, shaping our individual visions of truth. In Unitarian Universalism, you can bring your whole self, your full identity, your questioning mind, your expansive heart. Together, we create a force more powerful than one person or one belief system. As Unitarian Universalists, we do not have to check our personal background and beliefs at the door. We join together on a journey that honors everywhere we've been before, which connects us well with our worship theme for December, which is pluralism. I love what Ibu Patel had to say about it. To see the other side, to defend another people, not despite your tradition, but because of it, is the heart of pluralism. But what about including those who express political views we find objectionable or even abhorrent? This morning, we explore what it means to be pluralistic during these politically divisive times. If you are joining us in worship for the first time, we gladly welcome you to our service. If you haven't done so, we invite you to sign our virtual book in the chat or the guest book in the foyer for those of you in person, so you may be informed about future services and other opportunities for gathering with the Emerson community. Everyone is welcome to join us for refreshments during our coffee hour after the service in the pavilion through the doors to my right. On our virtual coffee hour, which will be here on Zoom, you can also join in. In a moment, we will greet our neighbors. If you have a joy or sorrow you would like read aloud during our embracing meditation, you may take this time to write in our book of life behind the piano or following the link posted in the chat. And now, in the spirit of fellowship, we will take time to greet our neighbors.
Good seeing you. That's right. Well, I appreciate it. Hi. I'm doing good. How are you doing? It's good.
It is good to be together. I'm the Reverend Matthew McHale, and my pronouns are he and him. So Unitarian Universalism is a living, changing faith. And being a living faith means that any one of us can change what we believe if we experience a deeper truth that is different or new. But in order to change, we have to be open to new thoughts, new ideas, new experiences. There's a saying that people were created with 2 ears and 1 mouth because we should listen twice as much as we speak. When we come together in community, we have the opportunity to listen to each other and gain a perspective greater than what we would have alone. Sometimes we listen with our ears, but when you are part of a sacred, beloved community, you listen not only with your ears, but also with your heart. A listening heart has a power to help us be better people. And so today I'm going to tell you a story, adapted from one by Jessica York, about one congregation that made a big change many years ago. This story takes place 75 years ago, when most faith communities in the United States were segregated. Segregation was one way that the United States tried to keep some black people, in particular, separated from white people. And some states required churches to be segregated, and others were segregated because all of the other churches around them did it, or because that's just the way things had been done. Now, we think of our Unitarian Universalist faith as progressive, liberal trendsetters, but in 1948, the First Unitarian Society of Chicago was segregated. Their church was in a racially diverse neighborhood where people of many colors lived, but only white people were allowed to go to that church. Now, the day came that many members began to believe they needed to take action against racism if they really wanted to live out their values and principles. And so the church's minister, the Reverend Leslie Pennington, and a man named James Luther Adams were ready to move things forward. Now, Adams was a famous theologian and ethicist, and he taught at the Meadville Lombard Theological School there in Chicago. And he was also on the congregation's board, a leader in the congregation. And along with some others, Adams and Pennington made a proposal to the church board to desegregate the church and welcome people whatever the color of their skin. They wanted to include, not exclude. And they saw this as a way to put their love into action. And most church members wanted the church to be welcome to people no matter what the color of their skin was. But one member of the board didn't. Your new program is making desegregation into a creed, he said. You are asking everyone in our church to say they believe that desegregating or inviting, even recruiting people of color to attend church here is a good way to tackle racism. What if some members don't believe this? Now, respectful debate ensued at the First Unitarian Society of Chicago, Both sides felt in their hearts that their belief was right. Perhaps they were so busy trying to be heard, they forgot to listen. And so they kept on talking. The debate went on in the board of directors meeting until the early hours of the morning, and everyone was exhausted and frustrated. Finally, James Luther Adams remembered that he should be listening twice as much as talking. And he asked the person who had voiced the strongest objection, "What do you say is the purpose of this church?" Suddenly, everyone was listening. Everyone wanted to hear the answer to this crucial question. Probably the person who objected was listening especially hard to his own heart, as well as to the words he had heard from other board members through the long discussion. The board member who opposed opening the church to people of color finally replied, "Okay, Jim, the purpose of this church is to get hold of people like me and change them." And that's the story of how the First Unitarian Society of Chicago successfully desegregated. The problems we face here and now in 2023 sometimes seem gridlocked, just like the Chicago Church Board's was in our story. Challenges we face as individuals and families, congregations, and neighborhoods, and even as a whole country, can feel so big that we'll never find a way through them. And yet people have, again and again, found our way through massive challenges. Not by bullying one another or coercing one another, but by staying at the table, staying in conversation, by refusing to stay quiet when we see injustice, by collecting the power we each have and leveraging that collective power in the service of our faith and our values. I now invite you to join me in saying our Unitarian Universalist affirmation. We are Unitarian Universalists, a people of open minds, loving hearts, and welcoming hands.
As part of our commitment to serve our community, we share half our offering. We share half our offering with the local organization whose work furthers our community. We call this Share the Plate. And as part of that commitment, the values of generosity and equity, we share half our offering with local organizations whose work aligns with our values. This month, that organization is the West Valley Food Pantry. Each month, the West Valley Food Pantry serves over 3,000 people who are food insecure, including people who are homeless, families, and elderly people living on a fixed income. There are several people in this community who are even more active. I know Linda Fitzgerald in particular is very active. I will say that Karen Biesing is there every time I visit, helping out, and I know many other people in this community are ongoing volunteers and helpers there. I myself, since I retired, have daytimes free, so I volunteer every Tuesday morning at the food pantry. I can personally attest that the need is constant, and cars line up around the block for hours. Local grocery stores and other groups donate their older food. We sort through the donations for quality. Bags are prepared for different sized families. My job is handing out extras like milk, bread, cut fruit, vegetable trays. Recently, we've had lots of pumpkin and apple pies. The new clients sometimes seem a little shy, unaccustomed to having to ask for help, but we make them feel welcome. And they can see by the long line that they are not the only ones dealing with hard times. Our regular clients greet us like old friends and are very cheerful. Their thanks are heartfelt. Donations can be made using the Breeze app or at donate.emersonuuc.org and by selecting Sunday Offering. Please make checks payable to Emerson UU Church and write Share the Plate in the memo. If you would like to make a payment on a pledge, please write Pledge instead. And now, the offering will be gratefully received.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Each Sunday, we take time in our service to lift up those joys and sorrows from within our community and in the wider world. This week, in our book of life, Lucas writes, "Live to love, love to live. Life is beautiful." And Andrea Reuter asks for thoughts for Ron's son, Brandon, who's going through tough times now. I want to briefly share a joy. One of the organizations that Emerson has been a part of and I've been organizing with as well is CLUE, Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. And the big campaign amongst many union campaigns that has been going on is trying to get better pay and working conditions for hotel workers. And I was tomorrow planning on going down for a protest at the Beverly Wilshire, where the Golden Globes were going to be held. And thankfully, I don't have to go there because the hotel signed an agreement with the workers there. So that's one of, I think, probably about 6 or 7 hotels that has already signed agreements, and there are more still ongoing. But just some gratitude for that ongoing work. In a moment, I'm going to sound this singing bowl, and after I do, I invite you to speak into this space any joys or sorrows, any names or occasions that are on your heart this morning that you would like lifted up into this community in this, our embracing meditation. all that has been named, and all that we hold in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. We offer these into the embrace of this beloved community. I invite you to join me in a spirit of meditation or prayer. I offer you these words adapted from Sarah Lawal. In this time, when rhetoric blusters about and words are used as weapons, our nation clenches its fists, tightens its shoulders, eyes squeezed shut. Some are preparing for a fight. May we remember our shared humanity, our universal kinship, our interdependence. As we unclench our fists and breathe together, breathing in love and breathing out peace. May we recognize the spark of the divine inside all of us, even those we are not quite sure about. In this time of uncertainty, we remember that good will go on. As we work to move forward together, we see the people seeking that which unites us, with our arms reaching out wide for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. May love prevail. In the name of all that is holy, we pray. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be. Please join in singing.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at all be filled with loving kindness. May all be well, may all be peaceful and at ease. May all be whole.
I dread holiday gatherings where I will be with family and friends who have different political views. I'm only mildly annoyed if they have different opinions about vegetarians, electric cars, taking cruises, and kissing your pets on the mouth. But certain buzzwords or the names of politicians instantly set off a fight or flight response. Why does it feel so visceral, like a personal attack, when someone close disagrees with my political views? John Lennon said that there were two basic motivating forces, love and fear. And I think they're active in politics, and those strong emotions are what make the political divide so emotionally charged. I like to think that progressive ideas that are more open to different cultures, gender identities, and green energy, and a bright future of new possibilities are motivated by love, and that fear of change or difference is often behind more conservative views. That makes it easier for me to feel empathy for people who have different politics, even if I don't agree with them. Feeling empathy instead of seething anger makes it a little easier to talk to my anti-gun control brother-in-law about how he taught his appreciation for hunting to his sons. And I can ask him whether he felt that cities would be safer if every owner had proper gun training, like we require before getting a driver's license. My dear father was a Ronald Reagan conservative who did not trust welfare, but was always willing. To buy McDonald's for the latchkey kid who lived near the tennis courts where he played, and generously supported his own children and grandchildren for many, many years. With enough time, my dad might have come to think that government aid for his latchkey friend might not be such a bad idea. I was raised to keep the peace and never discuss religion or politics, but after years of careful consideration, I beg to disagree. We have to learn to understand each other, and talking in a civil manner is the first step. Finding connections between the political divisions is difficult. But as Wendell Berry said, only by restoring the broken connections can we be healed. Connection is health.
I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join in singing Building Bridges. It's number 1023 in the teal hymnal. We're going to do this first together once, and then we'll do it as a round. And so we'll have this half of the congregation start off the round, and then this half come in. And so the first half will follow Kevin, and the second half you'll follow me. We'll sing that, let's say, 3 times through as a round. So once together and 3 times as a round, ending again with Friends, We Could Make Such Sweet Harmony.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our friends we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? All of our voices and all of our visions, friends we could make such sweet harmony. Friends we could make such sweet harmony.
Beautiful. As families gather for the holidays, whether a Thanksgiving meal to light the menorah for Hanukkah, a dinner for Christmas, or a New Year's celebration, as Tracy described, there might be some challenging conversations about politics. And in order to avoid those difficult conversations, some people have simply opted to forgo family gatherings altogether. I'm sure many of you have had the experience of disagreeing with family about some political issue, racial justice, LGBTQ rights, immigration, voting rights, or even basic facts about the world, like who won the 2020 presidential election, whether global warming is real, or whether the people who entered the Capitol on January 6th were just peaceful protesters. I read a New York Times article earlier this week about Jewish families having profound disagreements about the war in Israel and how that was complicating Hanukkah gatherings, and how in particular there was a big difference between millennials and Gen Z children and their parents or grandparents who had very different feelings about the state of Israel and the plight of Palestinians. And many of these political disagreements can fall roughly along generational lines. There have been generational differences on issues for generations. It's not something new. Differing opinions, say, about the Vietnam War or civil rights and women's liberation. Now, of course, these differences do not fall only along generational lines. There are plenty of older people who tend toward the liberal side and younger people who skew conservative. But regardless of the cause, the political polarization happening in our country right now is unlike anything that any of us have seen in our lifetimes. Those battle lines drawn in the sand. And that polarization extends beyond the holiday gatherings and into our congregations as well. Some congregations and denominations have already divided along partisan lines, with white evangelical Christians aligned with conservative politics and the Republican Party, and others, like Unitarian Universalists, conservative and Reform Jews, black churches tend more aligned with liberal values and the Democratic Party. In fact, according to a 2016 Pew study, 84% of Unitarian Universalists identified with or leaned towards the Democratic Party, and 14% identified with or leaned toward the Republican Party. Now, obviously, there's still some diversity there, but it was a stronger Democratic affiliation in Unitarian Universalism in any religion except for in the historically black churches. Another study from 2017, just a year later, found that 72% of Unitarian Universalist ministers were registered as Democratic, behind only Reformed Jewish rabbis and black AME pastors. But only 3% of ministers were registered Republican. The other 25% registered, as independent or perhaps as a third-party candidate. And that 3% is, not surprisingly, the lowest rate of any denomination in the country. Now, all that is to say that it's not to say that you can't be a Republican and be a Unitarian Universalist at the same time, but it has caused people to question if they belong, whether they belong in Unitarian Universalist spaces. Back in 2020, in the middle of the election season, someone who had attended Emerson years ago emailed the church office asking for a response from the minister, and they said they were born and raised Unitarian, but were also Republican. They said, "I feel like my beliefs are not really allowed in this church. I know there's a lot of tolerance for everyone, but Trump supporters. I loved the Unitarian church on the East Coast, very open-minded. I was wondering if things changed a bit with Emerson. Would my type be accepted there?" I responded, "I don't think that being a Republican is a problem. However, I personally find it hard to square support for Donald Trump with our Unitarian Universalist values." I responded, time and time again, Donald Trump's behavior and policies have been contrary to our Unitarian Universalist principles. The inherent worth and dignity of every person violated by the way he treats and talks about black people, Latinos, immigrants, Muslims, LGBT folks, poor people. Justice, equity, and compassion and human relations, same as the above, as well as all of the Trump administration's numerous policies attacking the above groups, that Trump does not appear to care about people suffering, only about himself and maintaining power. The principle of the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and society at large, contrasted with repeated attacks on voting rights with the clear goal of disenfranchising Democratic voters. And I wrote this, of course, before he had tried to overturn the election entirely. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, contrasted with an America First perspective, pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal, support for dictators, and disdain for our traditional democratic allies, and respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part, denying the reality of climate change, rolling back environmental protections, and repeated support for industries that are polluting and devastating our earth and the people and the beings who live on it. And if he were a Unitarian Universalist, he would be failing at the third and fourth principles, the need for spiritual growth, because honestly, I cannot see any growth present in him. And the fourth one, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, undermined by his flagrant, unabashed use of lies and ignoring truth whenever it's convenient for him. So it's hard, right? Can you support Donald Trump and be a Unitarian Universalist, leaving aside the Republican part. I think it's hard. Reverend Meg Riley, who at the time was lead minister for the church, or the CLF, Church of the Larger Fellowship, which is a primarily online church, a church without walls that serves people who don't have a congregation, whether because there isn't one nearby or because they're in prison, and who is now serving as moderator of the Unitarian Universalist Association, co-moderator of the Unitarian Universalist Association, wrote after the 2016 election, "If you are not appalled by Trump's behavior, perhaps you might reconsider what Unitarian Universalism means to you." And yet, I said, I don't demonize Republicans or Trump supporters. I think there is a place for Republicans within Unitarian Universalism, clearly. But I also was curious about that church she mentioned on the East Coast, the one that she felt to be so open-minded compared to what she had experienced here at Emerson and maybe other churches on the West Coast. I'm curious whether it's the same as she remembers now, because there has been a tremendous amount of polarization that has happened in our country over in the intervening decades. And I imagine many of those Republican-leaning UUs who identify as Republican back in 2016 probably count themselves, a significant majority of them, amongst the never-Trumpers. Many of them probably voted for Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden, not because they necessarily loved them as candidates, but because they could see Donald Trump being out of alignment with our values. And yet, I think it's important, as Tracy talked about, to reach across the aisles, to make connections and try to seek understanding with people of different beliefs in this time of political polarization. Of course, as Unitarian Universalists, we don't have to agree on everything, nor do I think we should. Listening to differing perspectives is healthy. Disagreements are healthy. It's one of the ways we grow, is to interact with different perspectives. And I think one of the things about Unitarian Universalism that gives this perspective is that because we have a wide variety of religious beliefs, right, of perspectives and practices, beliefs about God or the lack thereof, that we would be equally open to different political beliefs. But the reality is that we have always tended towards one side of the political spectrum. And that's changed over time as politics have changed, as the issues that Americans are concerned about have changed. And I think it's also true that our church has become more polarized today. But I think that's more a reflection of the political polarization in our country than within our religion. A similar thing happened during this country's other time of great national discord, in the years leading up to the Civil War, when there were deep divisions in this country over the issue of slavery. And at that time, the majority, but not all Unitarians, were opposed to slavery, seeing it as morally reprehensible. But what forms that opposition looked like could vary greatly from person to person. Conrad Wright, the historian and scholar of American Unitarianism, suggested that most Unitarians fell into one of three groups: those influenced by the prominent abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison, who acted for the immediate cessation of slavery; those who sought a gradual end to the institution of slavery so as to minimize disruption of the social, economic, and political order, and those who opposed slavery on moral grounds but resisted making a political commitment to end it. Millard Fillmore, one of our 4 Unitarian presidents, was firmly in that third group, whereas many ministers, including Ralph Waldo Emerson, were more likely to be actively campaigning for the immediate end of slavery, sometimes causing conflict within their congregations back then as well over differences of opinion of how to deal with the moral ill of slavery. And this pattern actually holds true today, that Unitarian Universalist ministers are on the whole more politically liberal than their congregations. It's actually true for most religions on the conservative end and the liberal end, that their ministers tend to be more conservative than their conservative congregations, or more liberal than their liberal congregations, whereas those in the middle, it can vary a little bit more from denomination to denomination. Again, these are generalizations. But this story, thinking about the Unitarian Church in the lead-up to the Civil War, points to the fact that we can disagree about issues, sometimes in the broad brushstrokes, but also in the smaller details in how we approach them. And so there isn't a party line that one must adhere to become a Unitarian Universalist, but there are viewpoints that are more common and which arise out of our commitment to our Unitarian Universalist values. As a church, we don't promote candidates, but we do promote values. And so I've heard it said in here, and it's been said in many other churches too, that maybe there's an orthodoxy to our Unitarian Universalist beliefs, not about religion, but about politics. But Paul Razor, a UU theologian, frames it this way. He asks, is it orthodoxy to live out your principles and deepest values? I don't think so. But it becomes a kind of orthodoxy if UUs who live out their principles in a different way are excluded or made to feel excluded. In other words, we aren't unified by our political beliefs, but we are unified by our values of justice and equity and generosity, of respect for pluralism. And that should direct how we live in the world. Those values we can take out with us into the world to help shape our actions. But it's also true that we can have a variety of opinions of what it means to live out those values, and that there isn't one right way to live out those values. In fact, there are as many different ways to live out those values as there are Unitarian Universalists. There isn't a party line of what you have to believe politically, but our Unitarian Universalist values of justice and equity call us to call out and counter oppression. Our honoring independence calls us to work for a better, healthier world. But still, sometimes people feel, like they're not welcome here. And to be fair, there's some self-selection. I imagine as I was listening to Tracy's welcome this morning, our welcome begins with the 1, 2, 3 of sharing pronouns, thanking people for wearing their masks, and then doing a land acknowledgement, which comes after saying our covenant in both English and Spanish, which may feel comforting to some people and make others think, oh my God, it's the woke left. Right? But we do all these things for a reason. And maybe people will self-select out because of it. But these are all sincere attempts to live out our values, to be more inclusive to folks who are marginalized, to trans and non-binary folks, to people with compromised immune systems, the indigenous people of this land, and those for whom English is a second language. Now, I'm also not necessarily convinced that things would be easier if we were a congregation, if Unitarian Universalism, or Emerson specifically, were a more politically purple congregation. Because over the past few years in particular, those purple congregations, which have a relatively even makeup, or a mixture of people who identify left or right, blue or red, have found themselves, I've read countless articles of these congregations struggling and straining, of people wanting to hear politics reflected in the pulpit or not wanting to hear politics reflected in the pulpit, and people there self-selecting out too, leaving the congregation when the minister says something they don't agree with, and finding a congregation where the message, where they won't be challenged every Sunday, or some Sundays, I guess I should say. And so it's been hard, I think, for those ministers. And that polarization, that national polarization, is affecting all of our institutions. Straining over at the seams over political differences, over Donald Trump, over Black Lives Matter, over approaches to COVID, over beliefs in global warming. And so I think it's important to hold our beliefs lightly, our political beliefs lightly, to acknowledge that there are different ways that we can be Unitarian Universalists, to live out our values, and to also recognize that there is a political realignment happening, and I wouldn't necessarily lay the blame on Unitarian Universalists. I think it is with the larger country. Some of it is social media. Some of it is just the smash mouth nature of politics, of wanting to beat the other person. And so I caution us to be wary of that desire to one up or to put down someone with different beliefs than our own. But that doesn't, and to understand where people are coming from. And at the same time, and while I think that's incredibly important, I also noticed that in the aftermath of the 2016 election, there was a lot of media focus on the forgotten America. And the way coastal elites had ignored the forgotten Americans. And there was a necessity to learn. Yet after the 2020 election, there wasn't that same hand-wringing on the other side about conservative people trying to understand people of color or LGBTQ folks. Building bridges is not the job of one person alone. I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? And it's not our responsibility, well, it is, I think, our responsibility to hold people with love and honor that all human beings have inherent worth and dignity. That does not mean we need to tolerate people whose beliefs, whose actions directly undermine our own sense of safety, our ability to be ourselves when attacks are happening against trans people about the ability to access health care. I don't think that's something that is negotiable. Also, we can disagree about the wisdom of defunding the police, say, but not the idea that Black lives matter. Our Unitarian Universalist values call us to lift up that Black lives matter as all lives matter. And before you go canceling me for saying all lives matter. We might have differences of opinion about how best to live out our respect for the interdependent web. I'm under no illusion that most people here are going to go vegan or stop flying on airplanes, but I can encourage us to think about the impacts on our way of life. And that is what we are called to do as Unitarian Universalists, to be in dialogue with those values that we share and let them guide our actions. And when the people in the proverbial pews, the people sitting next to us or joining us online on Zoom, have a difference of opinion of what living those values out looks like, then we need to acknowledge that and honor that. And so I think it's important that we listen. Listen to what others have to say. Listen to differences of opinion. Through there is growth. Through that is understanding. Through that is community. And may it be so. Before our closing hymn, a quick announcement. Join us after the service for a workshop about acting for climate change as people of faith, which is being hosted by our Environmental Justice Ministry. So if you're joining, grab a bite to eat, and then join in the sanctuary maybe about 15 to 20 minutes after the service is over, so around 12 or so. And now I invite you to rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our closing hymn, We Would Be One, number 318.
We would be one, as now we join in singing our hymn of love, to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other, to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for the meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, which love and justice strive to make us free.
As our service comes to a close and we extinguish our chalice, I invite you to reach out and take a hand or to bump elbows or touch a shoulder, whatever feels comfortable. If you're joining us online, to send some energy out to those others gathered here and also online as we send our energy back to you. close with the words of the Reverend Jean Rowe. We have a calling in this world. We are called to honor diversity, to respect differences with dignity, and to challenge those who would forbid it. We are people of a wide path. Let us be wide in affection and go our way in peace. Amen.